Hello again. For this video, I want to talk about the essay that I posted on Telling Writing by Ken Macrorie. So obviously, go back, read that essay, answer the questions that I posted before watching this, and then once you've done that, we can talk about it. So the first thing that I asked you about this had to do with this term that he uses a bunch of times in the essay, angfish, this term that he kind of made up, right? I know the sentence where they first use is a little confusing. It's supposed to be like a pun joke kind of thing. But I'm more interested in this sentence after that when he says, and he knew the student had found a name for the phony, pretentious language of the schools, Angfish. So I take that to be the definition, the phony, pretentious language of the schools. So let's break this down and try to figure out what he's talking about here. Phony, as in like not truthful, right? As in like fraudulent. So I think that what he's trying to get at here by saying that a lot of the writing that we do for school is phony is just to say that we don't mean it. We just say stuff. I think really what he's getting at here, and especially with this idea of it being phony, is the way that we bullshit essays, right? That's what me and my friends used to say all the time if we had something to do, or like if we wanted to hang out but we had to do work, be like, oh, all right, let me just bullshit this essay and then I'll call you later. Um, so yeah, bullshitting. I think you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So I think that's kind of the phony part of it, which again, it's just that we're not we're not trying to truthfully give our opinions on stuff or make an argument we believe in our writing. We're just kind of saying stuff just to like fill the space basically. And the other thing he mentions is the phony and pretentious language of the schools. So I think pretentious, which means like trying to sound smart or condescending kind of. I think he includes that part because I think that characterizes the kind of writing we do as a student where we try to like use vocabulary words or try to like sound fancy because we think that's what the teacher wants. Um, maybe trying to use overly complicated language or yeah, just generally trying to use like fancy vocab words. So I think both of those things combined are what kind of make up Angfish for this author. The characteristic of bullshitting, of it not being truthful or serious or really like, yeah, not reflecting our actual thoughts or opinions, just kind of taking up space, excuse me. Um, and that combined with the aspect of trying to like use vocab words and be fancy, give the teacher what they want in that kind of way. Um, I just want to read some more on this first page, just because I think this essay is really excellent. And I only asked you guys to read like the first 5 pages or whatever, but I think the whole thing is really good. I just want to read some more from this opening page. It says, most English teachers have been trained to correct students' writing, not to read it, so they put down those bloody correction marks in the margins. When the students see them, they think they mean that teachers don't care what students write, only how they punctuate and spell. So students give them angfish. The teachers call the assignments by their traditional name, themes. No one outside school ever writes anything called themes. Their teacher's exercise is not really a kind of communication. So I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. Number one is so this phony, pretentious way of writing. I think the first thing that we have to say about it is that it's not our fault as students. It's not the fault of the student that we write this way. Because I think you can read some of what he has here. Some of it does come off a little harsh, where it's kind of like tearing people apart for writing in this way. But I think he does acknowledge at certain times, like right here, that teachers and everything about school tells students that this is how they should write. So as a student, it's not your fault that you've bullshitted essays in the past, that you try to use big vocab words sometimes. It's not your fault. Teachers have told you to do this, and if not, they've set the expectation because of things like he says here, like how when we handed in writing in a lot of our classes, it would just come back with just things crossed out and things circled and spelling mistakes, and you have the comma in the wrong spot. And we've basically been taught that that's what writing essays is about. It's about following the rules. So when we get to focused on just following the rules and checking off all the boxes. Okay, I have a transition word. Okay, I have my thesis with the three things in it. I started my conclusion paragraph with in conclusion. Okay, check that box. And I think when we have that approach to writing, which again, it's not our fault if we do, but when we have that approach to writing, there just isn't a lot of space to like actually give your opinions. I think part of this is also because, a lot of times we get boring assignments, and maybe you think the assignments for this class are boring, but I think they're at least more interesting than like having to do those standardized essays about, if schools should make students wear uniforms, or what time the mall should close, or whatever. I think it's better than that, right? Those kind of bullshit persuasive essays. So I know sometimes we've had bad assignments, and that's why we feel like we're bullshitting. But it's really important, I think, in college and going forward to try to find some way to connect to the assignments, even if they're not really interesting to you. Still find some way to connect it maybe to your major or something interesting you're learning in another class, or just something you're interested in, so you can latch onto it and not just be phony and not just bullshit. Um, yeah, so the other things I like here, I like how he says that the assignments that were given a lot of time, he says they're teacher's exercises, not really a kind of communication. So I think we've got to. I've talked about audience before, about thinking about who your audience is, and I've told you to think about your audience as your peers and other students like yourself. And I think that one of the reasons that that's so important is because when we focus on the teacher as the audience, we get these problems where we're writing for them, where we're trying to jump through the hoops that we think they want us to jump through to get a good grade, and that's just never a good approach because it's hard to know exactly what teachers want, and every teacher might want something different. So you're better off thinking about a bigger audience than that. Um, yeah. So I think that's what he means by angfish. So I want to kind of break down some of the examples that he gives, and why he thinks they're angfish. And I think then I want to look at least one positive example that he gives and talk about why he thinks that one's better. Okay, so on the second page, on page 298, and I think all these quotes that he gives are from actual pieces of student writing. I think that was like part of the research of this, that this is real student writing he's using here. So here's a sentence. It says, the co-captains of the respective teams are going out to the middle of the field for the toss of the coin. So his main comment about this sentence is the word respective, right? The sentence again, the co-captains of the respective teams are going out to the middle of the field for the coin toss. And he's like, respective, like what reason is there for that word to be there? What does it do? So a lot of this stuff I think comes down to like the words that we use in our sentences actually adding something. The words that we use actually like doing work, or that there's a reason that we need them there. Um, so like I think what he's saying is that respective in this sentence, I think he thinks that the student's just trying to use a fancy vocab word basically, and not actually worried about giving you the best impression, or something like that. I think a lot of what we're talking about here too, a lot of what he's saying, and I think why he calls it telling writing, right? The name of the essay is telling writing. And I think part of the reason for that is that a lot of it is just kind of getting back to more the way that we talk. When we talk, we don't really have trouble giving our own opinions, I don't think, or at least not as much. When we're telling someone a story, we don't have a problem being truthful, or not being phony at least. I don't think we generally have problems not being pretentious when we talk. Um, so I think that's something to take away from this too. Is just try to write more like how you talk. If the goal of an essay is to convince the reader, are you more convincing when you write or when you talk? I think more people will say talk. So if our goal is to convince, why aren't we doing it in the most convincing way? So that's something else that I wanted to point out here. All right, there's one more example I want to look at. Okay, so here, this one's on page 300. It says, the automobile is a mechanism fascinating to everyone in all its diverse manifestations and in every conceivable kind of situation or circumstance. I think this one, it's really clear what's going on here, right? So, but part of the problem too is, um, like when we bullshit a paper, it's not just that we don't mean the things that we say. That's part of it, is that we're just saying whatever we think needs to be said. But the other part of it is just kind of using a lot of filler, right? A lot of the words are filler, a lot of the sentences are filler. And I can tell you that, as a teacher grading like a bunch of essays at a time, that could really get to you, when you get it's just these sentences that are just like empty and kind of unnecessary. And again, it's not our fault if we do this sometimes. It's what we've been trained to do. But I think we need to get out of this to try to write better essays, and make writing them more enjoyable, and I think ultimately would get better grades as well. So again, the automobile is a mechanism fascinating to everyone in all its diverse manifestations and in every conceivable kind of situation or circumstance. And the author says his first remark is simply untrue. Cars do not fascinate everyone. And I think that's right. And that shows the phoniness of this, right? That they don't actually mean this in any way, because the automobile is a mechanism fascinating to everyone. No, it simply is not fascinating to everyone, right? That's just not true. So I think that shows like the kind of phoniness of this sentence. And then, it's clear even just reading it, words like, mechanism, diverse manifestations, every conceivable kind of situation. It's very clear that they're also trying to put their vocabulary on display, right? That they're trying to sound smart as well. So I think this one is a good combination of the phoniness, and the pretension of it. Of, yeah, like trying to use big words when it's unnecessary just because you think that's what the teacher wants, and also you're trying to fill the lines as much as you can. Um, I just want to read some of what he says here. Yeah, so he says, an honest writer makes every word pull its weight. In this writer's opening sentence, the words kind of are not working at all. They can be dropped with no loss. So he's talking about the part it says, the car is fascinating to everyone in all its diverse manifestations and in every conceivable kind of situation or circumstance. So if you just said every conceivable situation or circumstance, it means literally the same thing. So that's what the author's pointing out here, is that the words kind of don't do anything, and that honest writing, all the words do something, or else we wouldn't use them. Because like, and why are the words kind of in this? Probably because they wanted to make it longer, because they're trying to reach a page requirement. So I just really think that again, the writing will be better, your grade will be better, and you'll feel better about it. Uh, if you just try to, more honestly give your opinions and your thoughts, and don't worry so much about filling the page. I think the best way to make essays longer, like I've talked about, I think, is by tinkering with the thesis and by finding more outside sources and more quotes and stuff like that. I think all of that is way better at making an essay longer than, just trying to add in 3 extra words in every sentence. That makes it sound like that. All right, so now I want to look at the positive example here. So this one's on page 299. And one thing, before I read it, I want to mention that, just like looking at this quote on 299 at the top of the page, you can see that there's a lot of words misspelled wrong, right? Like they spell Hawaiian, Huhwayyun, Hawaiian. It's like phonetically spelled, kind of not capitalized either. So this is the positive example, right? This is the one that the author says that this is good writing, and it has a bunch of spelling mistakes in it, right? So I think that goes back to something I've been saying a lot, is that we need to get our priorities in order. That vocabulary, spelling, stuff like this, it's important. It matters. Professors might take grades off, might take points off or stuff like that. But ultimately, what makes a piece of writing good is the argument, the organization, and I think, like he's saying here, being honest. Um, and writing, kind of seriously, and meaning what you say. It's just an underrated thing. If you mean what you're saying in an essay, it'll just come off sounding better. It'll be more convincing. It just will. Okay, so I'm going to read this example now. It says, I could play Hawaiian music on my guitar. It is like when grandma took a sick spell. Now she was shut up tight as a jar with a lid on. She gave a scream. When she gave that scream, it was high, but it got lower and lower. Hawaiian music sounds something like when she was getting lower. And he tells us that this was written by a third grader, right? Um, so I just want to read some of what he says, the author says he likes about this. He says, in the child's comments, the words speak to each other. High speaks to lower, and the ideas and things speak to each other. The Hawaiian guitar is like grandmother. When she was sick, she was like a jar with a lid on. The whole passage speaks to the reader. It's not pretentious, it's not phony, it's not private. In the Angfish paragraphs of the student themes, the words almost never speak to each other, and when they do, all they can say is blah. I'm gonna read just a little more here. It says college students were once third graders and occasionally wrote like that. Where did they lose that skill? Why? They spend many hours in school mastering Angfish. The fact that the teacher and textbooks sometimes employ Angfish suggests to them that's the official language of the school. They're learning a language that prevents them from working towards truths, and so they slide into telling lies. So I think, yeah, so what he's saying basically is that this writing, even though this paragraph, the sentences are short, um, there's spelling mistakes and stuff, but he marks it as being truthful, as being, meaningful, as the author seriously trying to communicate something to you, not bullshitting you. And I think he's right about this. Um, Yeah, so and I think this goes along with the little quote that he has here. So there's like these couple of little quotes from like historical figures throughout. This one's from Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, and it says, "Man's maturity, to have regained the seriousness that he had as a child at play." I think it's a really interesting quote. Man's maturity to regain the seriousness he had as a child at play. Um, so he's saying to be mature is to be as serious or to be able to be as serious as the child at play. So I think like when he says a child at play, I think we can imagine, if you ever had some kind of imaginary game where you like had sticks and they were like swords or guns or whatever, and there were aliens invading and you had to fight them, and there'd be a whole storyline and everyone had to take it seriously for it to work. If you were with three or four friends, you all had to be taking it seriously, or else the imagination of it is punctured and it doesn't work. Or it's like playing the floor is lava, where you have to take it seriously for it to be any fun, or for it to be interesting. So again, man's maturity to have regained the seriousness he had as a child at play. So and I think the author talks about this later, but growing up, we lose that. We lose our ability to play the floor is lava and have that be a fun game, right? Because it just seems stupid. Because the floor is not lava, we know that. So I think, growing up, he says somewhere else that, growing up is learning to tell lies. And I think that's why he picks the writing of a third grader to use as a positive example. Because he's basically saying, well, the reason they can do this is because they haven't been indoctrinated with all this bad advice about writing that makes us, not try to write truthfully. That makes us write in a phony and pretentious way because we think that's what teachers want. Um, so he's saying that to be mature is, to move past that phase of being too cool for school, like how, especially like when we're in high school, like caring about anything is like lame. If you take anything seriously, like the coolest thing you could do is not care about anything. So he's basically saying that to actually be mature is to be able to take things seriously, be able to care about stuff again and take it seriously. And I think this is a good lesson for writing essays because, again, even if it's a bad assignment, even if you don't care about poems, if you can take it seriously, the writing's going to be better. Because taking it seriously would mean actually giving your own opinions, and meaning it. And once you start doing that, you're not bullshitting anymore. So it's not going to read like it's bullshit. It's not going to feel like it's angfish. So I think we've all written this way. I definitely have written this way many times myself. I'm not trying to shit on you guys here, uh, but try not to bullshit your essays. I guess. I think it'll make it more fun for you to write. I think it'll make it more fun for your teachers to read, and I think ultimately you'll get better grades. Okay, so maybe I should end with this. I think I asked you guys this: how can we write more truthfully? How can we try to write more truthfully? Well, I think number one is having the confidence to really give our own opinions. I do think that's part of this too. Is that a lot of going to school, people don't want your opinion. We're not supposed to give opinions, right? We're supposed to be neutral and just talk about facts. That was always bullshit. Your opinions are important, and in college, you need to have your own opinions. you know. So I have the confidence in yourself to put your opinion out there. You guys are as smart as anyone else at this point. And I think teachers will respect it. Teachers like to argue. They really do. We're all arguers. We're all debate nerds. That's just how it is. So even if you're going against what the teacher said or something, I think most of the time they will respect that. So tell the teacher what you really think, and try to write an essay that is actually what you believe on the topic. And I think if you do that, it'll become a lot easier. And so free writing is kind of how they end the essay. Talking about writing more truthfully, the author prescribes free writing, which is also like automatic writing. It's kind of like stream of consciousness, where you just don't stop moving your hand. Basically, you don't worry about punctuation. You don't worry really even if it makes sense. You don't worry about the paragraph or the commas. You just kind of write like as fast as you can, just getting ideas out there. And I think this kind of goes along with the shitty first drafts way of writing a draft that we've talked about. But basically, the idea is if you're doing that stream of consciousness, if you're writing automatically, you don't have time to like censor it or to think, well, how could I add an extra 4 words to the sentence so that it's a little bit longer? You don't have time to do that stuff. You also don't have time to worry too much about where the comma goes and if your grammar is correct. And ultimately, that's going to give you more truthful writing. It's going to give you writing that's not phony or pretentious. It's going to give you writing that's real, that's authentic. And I think that's what teachers ultimately want, even if not all of them will come out and say that. I think a lot of teachers haven't done this kind of studying of composition as a field, so they don't know how to talk about it this way. But yeah, I would really encourage you guys to try to write more truthfully, to try to do less bullshitting. And I think that you'll find that it has a big effect on your writing. Try to write something that you like, you know? Think of yourself as a reader too. Try to write something that you would enjoy to read. I guarantee you that'll, yeah, it'll make it a better essay at the end of the day. All right, so I want you guys to think about this stuff as you're writing the essays here. So I think, we should try to avoid, I think I talked about this before, but try to avoid these kind of overgeneralizations or truisms. I think those are things that come from our instinct to bullshit. So, try to write truthfully, give me your real opinions, tell me what you really think. Okay, talk to you soon.